Are you ready for the ultimate bikepacking weekend adventure? Join us for an unforgettable self-supported bikepacking trip through Southwest Virginia. The Grayson Gravel Pie Bikepacking Adventure travels along the Virginia Creeper Trail, the beautiful gravel roads of Grayson County, Virginia, and the New River Trail. All lodging and camping arrangements are included, along with daily routes and guides riding along with you. This self-supported adventure offers resupply opportunities every 20 miles for your food and water needs. Find out more at graveltraveldirt.com.
You're listening to Mid-Atlantic Gravel, Travel, and Dirt.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brian.
I'm Joey.
And I'm Cass Fino-Radin.
Everybody, this is episode 232 of Mid-Atlantic Gravel, Travel, and Dirt. If you're new here, folks, this is the podcast where we talk about gravel bikes, adventure biking, bikepacking, bike camping, and at least like once a month we talk about UnPAved, right, Joey?
Yeah, at least once a month.
At least once a month. At least one. And so that's what we're going to do tonight, as well as what we did last week. Cass rode the UnPAved 200-mile course, which was new this year, and they are going to introduce us to that course and how that went down. As usual, folks, remember to check the show notes for current discount codes for folks like Cutaway and I can't even remember now the people.
Salt Stick, Orange Mud,
and Joe Bar.
Yes, that one.
Okay, so Joey, what have you got going on
the
this
bills?
week?
Real quickly, this Saturday, 7 p.m., the world headquarters of Hush Money Bikes is the Pants Ride movie night.
Oh, nice.
So it will be on YouTube on Sunday, but if you want to have the big premiere party, head over to Hush Money for the evening on Saturday.
This is the video that they did from the ride across Pennsylvania?
North to south, the ride
north to
down.
south. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, north
cool.
to south is
Nice.
Pants.
Nice.
Which is I'm really excited to see. I don't think I'll be at Hush Money. I'll be at my shop, but
I was gonna say,
it'll be out on Sunday. The Schist Show, however you want to say that. Everyone saw the posters at UnPAved is happening next weekend at Paper Trail.
I didn't see the posters at all.
Well, there's one on my table. You weren't at UnPAved. It is a 3-day event. It's going to be it's a dirt festival celebrating gravel cycling, mountain biking, and adventure mindset. There's going to have rodeo labs, Specialized, a couple other companies doing demos. The Broken Bell cyclocross races that is on Saturday night. Paper Trail has all their stuff going, so it kind of is filling up the normal time period that we'd all be at Philly Bike Expo, which is kind of cool.
Okay, yeah, that is cool. It's a cool poster that they put together.
The artwork's great. They were giving them out at parts of UnPAved. So
Nice.
I claimed one to bring down to my shop, and we got some stickers.
Nice.
And then the last bit of news is Mifflinburg tops ranking for bicycling in Pennsylvania.
Bum, ba, bum.
So the borough of Mifflinburg is considered the number one small city for bicycling in Pennsylvania and the Mid-Atlantic region, according to the nonprofit agency for People for Bikes.
Nice.
Also, like number 17 or 13 or 17 out of 1,700 in the U.S.
That's awesome.
So
That's what we were talking about with
Mid-Atlantic.
had Dave last week, and we were talking about the economic impact of bikes on a local economy, and there it is right there.
There's a great article. I'll post it tonight on our Instagram. It'll be in the show notes. So take a look at that. Just do you want to see how much of an impact UnPAved and the whole weekend has made on that town.
If I was still using my little like board over here with like sound effects, and you allowed me to do that, I would find the one for applause and hit that one.
It's okay.
I'm not going to do it because Joey doesn't like that.
That was it. I just wanted to give those quick things, but congratulations to the folks at UnPAved and Mifflinburg.
Cool.
And everything they do the whole weekend we come up there. It's not just one day, it's 3 to 4 days for everyone.
Cass, was this your first UnPAved?
It was, yeah.
Okay, cool. And you dove right into the deep end.
Yeah.
This was my first gravel race ever.
Oh wow. Well, welcome to gravel.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Joe, you want to jump into Strava Club? real
Strava
quick?
Club, and then we'll get into all the good stuff. All right, real quick. This was a Pennsylvania sweep.
Oh,
I'm just going to say it as that. We had Richard Askren from Ben Avon, Pennsylvania with 174.3. Bree Bear from State College, Pennsylvania with 160.5, and Will Spin with a little turtle emoji from Area 51, Pennsylvania with 100.7.
Love that.
Top 100, he only needed 100 miles this week. Strava Club's up to 904.
Nice.
And we're at strava.com/clubs/gravel travel dirt.
I love that it was a Pennsylvania sweep.
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
I
Did
just
you nicely
random
done.
scroll, and that was it.
Nicely done. Oh, random scroll. Nice. And I love that name, Will Spin Turtle.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like that a lot. So congratulations, Richard, Bree, and Mr. Turtle for hitting the top 100 random rider shoutouts. Okay, let's dive right in. UnPAved 200. Cass, please take just a moment and introduce yourself to our audience.
Sure. So my name is Cass, and I like bikes. So I guess bit of background on me as a cyclist. I'm not a super serious racer or anything like that. I did a little bit of road racing around like 2016, 2017-ish. Didn't really have a good time. This was back when I lived in New York City and I was doing like crits in Prospect Park. I did like the Grants Tomb crit and just really wasn't for me. Wasn't really the scene for me. Fell into bikepacking, loved it. Had a little bit of a hiatus, and then oddly enough, during the pandemic, while everyone else was getting into cycling, I wasn't really riding my bike that much. It's really weird. And then, coming out of it, I just got really back into it in a big way. Moved to upstate New York, where I've been getting in a lot of long miles, and decided to give gravel a shot. So here we are.
Cool. And upstate New York, there's a lot of gravel in upstate New York.
Yeah. So I hail from the lovely city of Rochester, and the thing that I love to tell people is that it's a real secret cyclist paradise. So I live in a neighborhood that's close to the Genesee River Trail. And so 4 minutes out of my back door, and I'm on that trail that connects to the Genesee Valley Greenway, which is, I think like just over 100 miles of gravel. Goes all the way down to Letchworth. And it also connects to the Erie Canal, of course, which is, about 360 miles. So whole network of awesome trails, lots of hiking, lots of mountain biking.
Now, we were talking about this a little bit in the pre-show. We've had several ultra endurance folks that do these really long distance events, and it seems like that's the thing that they're kind of like have dedicated their lives to. But you hold a normal everyday job, correct?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, I would hesitate to say normal and everyday in the sense that I run my own business and I work for myself and I don't have any employees, so I have a whole lot of freedom. So I do have the luxury of, and I should also say I don't have children, so I have the luxury of a lot of flexibility with time. So I do take my training very seriously, and I have the luxury of being able to, really treat myself like a professional and take, privilege my training over everything else when I need to, which I know is a luxury that a lot of people don't have or really struggle to find balance with.
Now, you're also a fellow podcaster, correct? Did I do my homework correctly?
It's true. Yeah, I host a podcast called Art and Obsolescence. And so actually that's, if you're curious about what I do for work, that's the easiest way to find out, because so I'm an art conservator. So if you in TV shows and movies, you always see like the people who like sit in front of a painting and repair it or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so those are art conservators. So that's what I do, except that I specialize in art that uses technology. So contemporary art that uses film or video or sound or software or interactivity. And so Art and Obsolescence is a show where I interview artists and collectors and curators, anybody who is involved in that particular niche within the art world.
Okay. I just finished an episode of a podcast that I listened to today called Heavyweight. I don't know if you've seen that or heard of that. It's a Spotify podcast, but there was the guy solves problems for folks, and there was a particular episode where they were trying to go back and find a videotape of an interview from the Vietnam War era. And they talked about the difficulties of that, because before the 1970s, when networks would finish cutting something, they would literally destroy or roll right over the tape again. So anything that predated 1970 is kind of lost, it feels like. Interesting though. So cool, very cool. You've got a fun and probably very challenging job in that. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Well, let's get back to talking about bikes. That's what Joey wants to do.
Sure.
Let's go back to talking
I
about
love
bikes.
everything.
Let's specifically talk. I always love to start with the bikes. So walk us through the stable of bikes that you've got.
Yeah, right now it's only two, believe it or not. So the bike that I rode for UnPAved is 7 cycles, custom titanium. It's, I would say, mostly modeled after their Evergreen model, with a few significant differences. So tie frame, full mountain group set. It's full Eagle GX, and has clearance for UnPAved. I ran 2.25 mezcals. That's kind of the max tire size for it.
Big tire.
And generally what it's built around as well. And it's got an NV Adventure fork on the front. And I generally keep that bike set up as a kind of like ultra endurance FKT chasing machine of sorts. So it usually has aero bars on it and always has the frame bag on it. And, I'm always running like a 3-liter water bladder inside the frame bag, that kind of thing. And then my other bike is a Surly Straggler. And that's kind of, my touring, do everything kind of bike where it's, less precious.
Okay. Well, as you know, I'm a fellow titanium rider, and I think everybody should ride titanium because it's such a comfortable bike. I love my titanium.
My rule is 35.
Is that the age?
I got like a year and a half.
All right. Well,
yeah, I have to say, riding the 7 for UnPAved was really, really fun because, as we might discuss later, the terrain of UnPAved was just very different from what I'm used to riding around home. And so just really getting the opportunity to like really let out the lead on this bike and like lay it into the corners was really, really fun. And, it's just flexy in all the right places, stiff in all the right places, and it just performed incredibly.
So do you do a lot of ultras, these ultra endurance long distances? Is it something you normally do?
Yes and no. Like I said, it's my first gravel race, so in terms of formal events, not really. Early in the season, I did an FKT attempt of the Great Allegheny Passage in the Chesapeake and Idaho towpath. And at the time, I did break the record for a solo unsupported rider, and then somebody beat the record promptly after me.
Oh, no.
But other than that and UnPAved, those are really the only two kind of like formal ultra things that I've done. But I've always been, somebody who's just doing junk miles, big stupid rides and stuff like that.
Okay. All right.
So it is very much my speed. And, now that I'm kind of really back into, competing and riding my bike in a big way, it's, I'm going to be doing more of these events for sure. And hoping to do the Tour Divide in 2015.
Okay.
What was your time of the Gap and C&O?
Let me pull up Instagram so I don't.
I had a friend Matt trying to do it. I've never even thought about the actual FKT of it.
Yeah, you're right. Like just doing the whole thing. Yeah.
The whole thing. I've seen folks do the canal in one shot or the Gap in one shot, but not both.
I'm going to guess somewhere between 48 and 60 hours.
So my total time for the Gap and the C&O was 22 hours and 35 minutes.
Oh, God. Wow.
You're only a third off.
I was only way off is what it was. Wow.
And the new current record is 19 hours 38 minutes, which is held by a rider named James Wilson.
Oh, wow. That's 315 miles, correct me if I'm wrong?
336, I believe.
336. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, congratulations on even trying to make that effort, and then even and getting there and holding it for a short period of time is quite the
thanks.
Quite the undertaking.
There was a major disaster that happened in the middle of the ride. Actually, a couple. First of all, my back wheel fell apart. Oh. Thankfully, I had a spoke wrench. And the second thing was I had a homemade drink mix that I was relying on pretty much the entire race. And I had to mix a few different batches throughout. And my final batch of drink mix got clogged up. And so I lost a whole bag of drink mix. So you can see basically after that happens, you look at my power graph and just like my power drops by like 100 watts for the rest of the ride. But, barely made it by the skin of my teeth.
Is there another attempt at that in your future?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to reattempt it this spring.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Very good. Well, you have to check back in with us on that one and see. So how do you even begin sort of training for these ultras as somebody? And I'll go back to, we don't have normal everyday jobs. I kind of fall in that same camp that you do. We kind of like have a lot of flexibility when we work for ourselves and we don't have people that work for us. I'm kind of in that same boat. But even still, it's like you have you have normal adult responsibilities. So how does that fit in with the training for these ultras?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty good at forgetting about the adult responsibilities when I'm doing bike stuff.
That might be
It's like, oh, I need to do yard work. Oops. Oh, dishes? What are those? Laundry? Yeah. So in terms of my approach to training, so last winter I started off with Trainer Road. I'm a huge fan of Trainer Road. Really, really love the platform. Also a huge fan of the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast. Listening to that podcast and starting on Trainer Road at the beginning of last season, well, this season really, really changed my relationship to training. I mentioned that I did a little bit of road racing in the past and some bike packing. I really wasn't training consistently back then. And I really didn't understand the principles, or enjoy it. And the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast, really helped me begin to understand just the principles of, good periodized training and what it can do for you and the importance of year over year consistency. So with how much fun I had this year, I'm super excited to see what next year is like, because it will be my first year of year over year training, back to back, actually being consistent. So that's super exciting to see what I can do. So, began with Trainer Road, I believe what I did is, and for those who aren't familiar, it's basically, a sort of self-guided, AI-based coaching platform where, you put in your events and you tell it, kind of what your goals are, what your races are like. So are you doing cross-country mountain bike? Are you doing crits? Are you doing time trials? And it will generally build a plan that's based around the type of events that you're doing, as well as, when your events are, to try and get you to peak around your A races. So I started with that. But then I was unsure of how to, they obviously don't have ultra distance stuff as an option on the platform, because I think there probably are just maybe 100 people who would want that or need that. So I started thinking about obviously I do need to start building in some bigger base miles. And I'm not sure how to integrate that without harming, the rest of the training, because I'll be adding a lot of TSS to my plate. And that's, if I'm doing that outside of the platform, the AI is not going to know about that. So it could burn me out. So I decided to work with a coach. Actually, it's not true. I did work with a coach one time before in the past. But so I decided to work with a coach, went through Training Peaks, coach matching platform. And I was matched with Coach Caitlin Mitten, who is she is the ultimate badass. Awesome, cool. UCI Masters track cyclist, world champion or national champion. I'm sorry, Caitlin, I can't remember which. But she was incredible. Just really got it. Totally understood the kooky goal of doing an FKT. That's not even a real official thing that people do, And that was actually one of the funnest parts about preparing for that FKT, is that, the whole thing for me started with riding that trail, which I'd ridden many, many, many times and done super chill bike tours on. And then one day I just found myself wondering, I wonder how fast I could do this, if I really tried. And then went home and Googled it, and I found on fastestknowntime.org, which is for through hiking, there were a bunch of cyclists in the comments who were like, I don't know where to put this, but like I did a thing.
Okay.
And so there was this weird little community of like 10 cyclists in the comments who had like, successively beat each other's records and written like really comprehensive ride reports. And I really enjoyed the camaraderie of that and, the spirit of it, and in the sense that like everyone was like, okay, here's my time. I beat the record, but here's what you should do next time to beat my record. And so Caitlin really, really, I think just was on the same wavelength with all of that. And that was really cool. And so she really helped me, continue doing obviously the interval training and focused on building my sustained power and raising my FTP, but still integrating like longer rides and helping me really integrate that in a big way without adding too much, too many base miles, because like I'm really of the school of thought that like if you have experience doing big long events when you're training, you don't need to do big long events necessarily. Because like if you're familiar with what your body does, then you're prepared for it. And I think that's really the only aspect of preparation for like an ultra thing that's important. Like you do need to know what happens at like mile 200 and how you feel at mile 300. But if you already know that, then doing those kinds of miles leading up to your event isn't necessarily helpful. I think that there are cases where that's very, very different. I think when we're talking about bike packing, in day over day over day over day events like Tour Divide, I think that that's very different. And I think when you look at the kind of training that, people like Lael are doing and like all other, ultra cyclists, where they're riding to the start of these events, like they're not tapering. I think that the science, I mean, none of this has been studied. Like somebody needs to put these riders in a lab and like understand like what they're doing and how that works. But it seems like for those like very long distance events, like multi-day events, it's a little bit different. But I think when you're talking about just one of these like one shot, 1 day things, having those like base miles in your legs is a little bit less important, and just having that freshness and that like big engine built up is the more important part. So did that, worked with Caitlin, met my goal of breaking that record. And then originally I had no plans for doing UnPAved, and I was planning on trying to set the FKT for the Erie Canal in the fall, which I'm still planning on doing, and I'm doing that in 2 weeks. But then, I don't know, I just saw all the posts about UnPAved on Instagram, and my friends from like Rochester Gravel Collective were telling me about it, and it just looked like so much fun. And I saw the Big Lick get announced, and I was like, I gotta do that. That looks so rad. Nice. So I signed up for that, and preparing for UnPAved and continuing to train like for my next FKT, I just went back to Trainer Road because, after having worked with a coach to work towards my kind of unique goals, I felt more comfortable kind of doing it on my own this time. And I'm also kind of like figuring out ways to kind of like manipulate the Trainer Road platform to like work around more of like my unique goals a bit. Plus, now that I have like the miles like from these events in my legs, it's a little bit less of a concern to like build up those big miles.
Like you said, it's like once you've done that 200 and 300 and you know how your body responds, then you don't do a lot of those 200 and 300 mile rides while you're training for that ride. It's just that importance of knowing how your body responds when you reach a certain point. And I'm of the opinion, I've said this before, people like Lael, wire differently, and I don't know that it is as much physical as it is mental. I think there's a tremendous amount of mental strength that comes to bear with something like that.
Yeah, it's absolutely both. I mean, I think it's undeniable that somebody who can do I think that like this year's Tour Divide is a great example. Like look at, Ted King, like, former Pro Tour rider, like who unfortunately just had to scratch. And he
stayed in too many janky hotels, if you ask me. He went in too many like musty, dusty hotels, Ted. You need to stay out of those.
Maybe that's what did it. Yeah, no, I think that the people who win those kinds of races, they're a incredible hybrid of both, the mental toughness, of course, but also like it's just undeniable. I mean, like you have to be an absolute beast and have a huge endurance engine to be able to just, even if you're only going like objectively slow compared to like what you're doing for like a shorter, like just 1 day event. That's still a lot of miles. I guess then more maybe on like the macro scale, just like day to day for my training, I tried to just be like really consistent and in terms of like just doing the same thing every day, like getting up at the same time, having the same pre-training breakfast. I would aim to have a proper full meal 3 hours before my training session. I would fuel during my training sessions if they were a really intense day. And I made sure that I was, fueling with what I would be fueling with on training day. So I used the early like winter and early spring months to really experiment with that and figure out what worked for me, trying a lot of different things. And I found that the thing that worked best for me was I do a homemade drink mix that's just 2-to-1 of maltodextrin and fructose and a little bit of MCT powder, which is, so you're basically just taking the raw ingredients. That's mostly just, that's what any sports drink mix is. They're just taking different kinds of sugars and combining them. And the 2-to-1 maltodextrin and fructose is based on just like the latest research that shows that with that ratio, you can see, I think it's like a 60% greater absorption versus if you just have one sugar source. And then the MCT is just to have a little bit of fats in there. So like that, and then homemade rice cakes, like the cycling rice cakes. I was using the recipe out of the GCN cookbook. So those two things worked really well for me, just like really easily digestible, and mostly focused on the sugars, and then just like a little bit of the rice cakes to just have like a little bit of a base of like real food. Because I find if I only do the liquid during a really long event, I start to get like actually physically hungry, which is obviously like not a good thing on a ride like that.
Now, Joey, did you follow all that science?
I love making homemade rice cakes for cycling.
There's a lot of science there. I applaud you for actually putting together your own sports drink, right? It sounds like that's what you did. Is you made your own gig, so that's pretty cool.
I was wondering what was in that.
Yeah,
bag.
Well, it's much more affordable. Like once you start fueling during training, it's like, I got to figure something else out. Because if it's even if it's just something like Scratch, like that usually works out to like $4 a training session, and like that's not sustainable for me. I don't know about you.
That's so my training session, Joe, you know this. My training is I ride to McDonald's. That's my mid-ride fuel.
Yeah.
Nice. Not always true.
There's no McDonald's in the middle of Bald Eagle State Forest.
Not always true, but sometimes true. So that's I really do. I can't get over the fact that you do your own nutrition and build your own gig. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I really do think that's super cool. Let's talk about the course.
Let's get into the 200.
Yeah, let's get into that 200. So I'd love to know, before we even dive into the actual riding of the event, what kind of homework do you do? What kind of like research? Because it sounds like you're very methodical, and I can almost guarantee that you studied that course and you knew what was coming up. So how do you approach that?
Yeah, if you haven't detected a trend, I'm a little obsessive.
Thorough.
So I think
let's say thorough.
There you go. Well, the biggest thing that I've learned over the years from like bike packing or just like tours or really any kind of adventure cycling is that the unknown is the biggest risk, right? If you don't know what you're up against. And I learned that the hard way with my first ever bike packing race. I did the AZT, having never done a mountain bike race, having bought a mountain bike 6 months before the race, and having never ridden any of the AZT or even really spent any time in Arizona. And day one of that race was just like day one of that race was a giant slap in the face. And also shout out to all the racers about to start that. The race starts this week. So that was a lesson really early on, that like the more you can know going into it, it's not just the better prepared you're going to be in terms of like, oh, I know this section is tough, or I have a better tire selection. It also just is less of a mental shock, because I think for any kind of cyclist doing adventure cycling, there's always that wake up call moment where you realize that maybe your expectations were a little bit too ambitious, and that can be a really tough thing to swallow while you're in the middle of a really hard effort, right? So the more you can prepare for that, I think the better. So what I decided to do, because I had never ridden my bike around that region, around Lewisburg and Bald Eagle State Forest, I drove down the weekend before the race, and I pre-drove the whole course. Just really wanted to get a sense of it, because I knew I was going to be doing a lot of it in the dark. Wanted to, have a real muscle memory for like all the turns, and really understand like the descents and like how, what parts are sketchy and so on. And that was really, really useful. The part of it that wasn't useful was that my axis derailleur bricked itself the second I stepped on my bike when I got there. So I didn't get to actually ride at all my bike when I pre-drove the course, which I think if I had, I definitely would have put on a smaller chainring by a few teeth. And it's possible that could have changed my result significantly, because we'll get into that later. But yeah, so I pre-drove the course, and in hindsight, it was really tough to gauge how tough those climbs were when you're driving it. When you're driving it, it's like, okay, like this, yeah, sure, this is a climb, but this feels kind of like, I don't know, it kind of feels like rail trail grade. Like maybe it's 4%, but there's a couple of those that are not.
Right. Yep.
So that was pretty much the prep that I did in terms of checking it out. And then I like to just really, in terms of like nutrition and hydration, have a very, very specific plan in place that I can stick to religiously, so I don't have to think during the race. Because, any thinking that you have to do, you're burning glucose. And if you're struggling, you're not going to think as well, and you're going to make poor decisions. So I like to just have a plan and stick to it and not have to think about it. So I usually, what I start with is I use a tool called Best Bike Split. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Mm-hmm. It's mainly used by like road racers and like time trialists. And didn't I don't think it worked so well on this course. I think that there's and I've been talking to the guy that runs that site about a couple of different courses I've been playing around with simulations on, and he's been tweaking a couple of things, because I think it's people using it for gravel is still pretty new, maybe. Mm-hmm. But so I started with that, because you obviously can't just say like, okay, like this is probably going to be my average speed, so I'll use that to figure out like how many hours, like for instance, how many hours is it going to take for me to get to mile 50, because I have to measure things in hours, because I know how much fluid I lose in an hour. Because if, let's say, that first 50 miles is extra tough, it might not be 4 hours, that might be 8 hours. Right. So I started with the Best Bike Split simulation just to give me a rough sense of like how long it's going to take me to get to certain distances. And then I use that to say like, okay, like this is going to be my water refill number 1, water refill number 2, and then this is where my drop bag is going to be and Joey, that's where you and I met. And this is where my drop bag is going to be with my next hydration pack and so on. So that was kind of like the final part of my preparation, I would say, just in terms of having a map for the course, knowing where my stops are and all of that. And just sticking to that plan and sticking to my power targets on the course, or trying to, just to make sure, I didn't blow myself up, but I was still putting in an effort.
Now, the course, you've already kind of hit on the fact that, and I agree, when you drive something, it's damn near impossible to kind of, you check out, I think, sometimes in the car, and you're kind of driving it and you're not thinking about that. And so what I heard was that once you got on the bike, it was kind of drastically different than what maybe you had thought some of those sections were going to look like. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think the thing that the drive did help me with was the chunkiness of the terrain. There were definitely parts that were way more rugged than I saw in pictures, for instance. So that was really helpful. Like I definitely, I upsized the tires based on that, just because I wouldn't overkill on the tires for sure. Like 2.25 is pretty big for gravel, of course. Mm-hmm. but it just, when you're on it for 200, 300 miles, the more you can soften the blows, especially like on a washboard section or like, baby heads and stuff like that. It just means you're not going to get as tired. So it helped in that regards. But yeah, in terms of the grades, definitely didn't give me any kind of sense of what I was up against. And I think like if I'd been a little more meticulous, maybe in looking at the GPX and like selecting the climbs and like looking at the average gradient for those, like maybe I would have been a little more mentally prepared. But then again, I mean, all the riding I do at home is so flat that since I've been in Rochester for 2 years now. And I used to do a lot of riding in the Catskills when I was in New York City. I've kind of forgotten, like, what does 8% even mean? Like, what does that even feel like? I don't even know anymore. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Even if I had really meticulously studied the GPX, as far as the grade is concerned, I don't know if I still would have been prepared.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
Yeah.
Fair. That's fair. So do you know how many people did the 200? Joey, do you know? Or Cass, do you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were 10 starters.
10 starters. Okay. 10 starters. And then how many finished? Because I'm sure there was an attrition rate on that.
There were 6 of us. Yeah, there was a 40% scratch rate. So four people didn't finish. One of which unfortunately was due to a crash. I know of maybe more. But I don't think so. I think the other ones they went off course and decided to head back pretty early on. It looked like when you look at the replay on Track Leaders.
Okay. And how did that? Was it a mass start? Was it a group start? Was it a time start? How did the start play out?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I mean, one of the things that I absolutely loved about this event was that because it was the first year they had done it, it was kind of an adventure for everyone. I don't think anyone really knew what to expect. And there was an email that went out maybe the week before that said, some of you have expressed a little bit of concern about the 16-hour cutoff. So I was like, oh, should I be concerned? I wasn't, but I guess
now I am.
I absolutely should have been. Yeah. And so what they decided to do was a rolling start where they basically, which from what I gather was a bit of a last minute scramble because they had to talk to the Forest Service, I believe, and talk to track leaders and kind of like reconfigure a few things to make sure that would work and that they had the proper permits and everything for that. Because I think this being the first year that UnPAved had done this, they were justifiably a little nervous about having, 10 racers out in the woods in the middle of the night that they were responsible for.
And it's dark out there. I've ridden out there in the dark. It's dark. It's dark.
Yeah, it's not riding at night rules though. So it was a rolling start. So they gave us a window of you can start between this time and this time. And they decided at the end of the day, there is no cutoff.
Okay.
Thankfully, in my case, considering I came in dead last of the finishers. Spoiler, sorry. So I decided to start at 2 a.m. on Sunday morning, and that was just because I knew I was going to be one of the slowest people, and I was like, well, if I turn out to be fast, then great, I'll be done early and I can party. But if not, then at least it won't be like Tuesday by the time I'm done. So I decided to start at 2 a.m. and amazingly, Rich came to see me off and count me down. That was incredible and totally unexpected. That was really, really nice of him to come out. And I don't
kind of guy.
I don't think he slept the whole weekend. I think he was glued to the track leader screen. Nice. I think he felt personally responsible for all of us out there. And it was really great.
So what compared to you started at 2 a.m., what did other people do? Was it sort of all in the same kind of window or a little bit later?
It was kind of a rolling start in the sense that I started at 2 a.m. I believe Jess started at, that's Jessica Ninkman, started at 3 a.m. I think somebody started at 4. And then there was a big pack of racers that started, I want to say 5 or 6, and they all started together, and I guess they all knew each other, so they all kind of rode together until the wheels started to come off, and then it was kind of like every racer for themselves.
Right.
And that was a pack that included all of the top 5, top 4 finishers. I don't know if any of them scratched or not, but I know that the top 4 finishers were all in that initial group that started together.
Okay.
And, one of the fun things about being slow on the course and starting before everyone is that you get to see the fast people pass you, which is so cool because they're so inspiring, right? It was amazing. So Greg, I don't recall his last name off the top of my head, but he was one of the first people to pass me, and that was just amazing to see. I mean, he was a beast.
Nice.
It was, totally like powering up this climb, and unfortunately, he's the person that crashed. It was very far into the race too, unfortunately. And oddly enough, I didn't see Jessica when she passed me. I think it maybe was when I was at the aid station or something like that. But actually, when Greg passed me, it was funny though, because he passed me on this big climb, and then I saw him like 5 minutes later because he couldn't find the trailhead for the first single track section. And there was a case in point exactly why I did the course prep, because I noticed that when I did the course prep, I was like, where's the trail? And so I did a little bit of more sleuthing, and when I actually came back for the race, I had to go back to that spot to like actually find it. So, when I rolled up and he was looking around for it, I was like, follow me. And then he passes me again on the single track. And then, we played like leapfrog for a little while through that section. And it was just really interesting to see that, how this course really, it privileged different skill sets, right? So like I was able to navigate those sections, not just due to my preparation, but also just due to my experience and like riding a lot of routes where it's just like, where's the trail? You kind of develop this like trail spidey sense of like, well, there's like a little bit of something over there. That must be it. Yeah. And it looks like the GPX is like pointing kind of that way. So that must be it. And I really like that about the course, that it's, and I know that's not for everyone. I know there's a lot of people that do gravel races that are kind of roadies, and they like what they call more pure riding, which to me means like more like road. But I like these courses where it's like a little bit of everything, a little bit of something for everyone.
Right. And so what in the whole of it, what did you think of the course?
I loved it. It was totally sadistic, totally adventurous, just so brutal, so gorgeous. Yeah, it was incredible. The big thing for me, so I alluded to this earlier, so I'll just talk about it now. The big thing for me was the climbing. So basically with my gearing and with like my weight and like how much stuff I was carrying, I just wasn't able to do the climbs without going so far into the red that it was just not good. Like if I had powered through those climbs, even if I could have, I would have cooked myself and I would have burnt all my matches and I probably wouldn't have finished. So that's what I was saying in terms of like, if I had like just a slightly smaller chainring, it's possible that I could have, not had to get off and push my bike on some of the climbs. And that would have had just an exponential, effect obviously on my average speed. So I probably could have shaved a few hours off if I had done that. But yeah, the course in general, oh God, it was gorgeous. I've never ridden roads like that. They don't have those in Rochester. It was just so beautiful, just gravel as far as the eye can see, and the animals. One of the things I love about night riding is just how you develop this relationship with the land around you and the forest and all the critters that come out at the different times of night. And I saw like 5 giant porcupines. And they were so hilarious because I know not all porcupines are like this, but some porcupines, maybe it's like a seasonal thing. Sometimes they only have quills on like their back half.
Right.
And these ones had that. So whenever they would see me, they would go like, and they would like jump and like turn around and like stick their butt in my direction. It was just like the cutest little like cartoon character moment.
Oh, that's fantastic. And you can't, that's not something I think you can experience, like, or even in a video component. I don't know that you can really communicate that. It just doesn't come through. It's like you have to experience. You have to be there and experience it.
For sure.
Really cool.
And that's what I love about doing rides like this. For me, these like kind of really long distance rides. It's about like, once you get past a certain point of exertion, you kind of just begin to become one with everything around you, and you develop this kind of like symbiotic relationship. And like, I don't know. That's a huge part of it for me.
So let's actually dive into the ride, because we've talked a lot about what's going around it, but let's dive into, and I don't know I don't even know how you can recap a 200-mile ride, but let's do the best we can, and maybe let's pick out some highlights and maybe some lowlights too.
Sure. Well, I guess maybe by the numbers first.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm looking on Training Peaks first, and that duration is not correct. That looks like maybe a moving time.
What do you use to record all your data stuff? Training Peaks, Strava?
Oh yeah, so well, I upload it everywhere, but I use a Wahoo Roam, which is a new thing. I started using that like this year, and I switched from Garmin just because I got tired of my Garmin crashing. Turns out Wahoo's crash too.
They all do.
It's one of the laws of cycling is like all cycling computers totally suck. They just suck in different ways.
Everybody carries multiples anymore, I think. Multiple recordings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I use my phone as the backup. I record it on Ride with GPS, which is helpful not just to have the backup recording, but also I find it's helpful because you can see your waypoints on the phone a lot easier. You know, you can kind of like zoom out and be like, okay, I'm almost to that water spot. Okay, so by the numbers, 202.95 miles. Elapsed time, 26 hours, 15 minutes, 46 seconds.
Wow.
Total kilojoules, 10,493. And that's a weighted average power of 164 with an average power of 129, which of course points to obviously I was walking a lot because that's a very low average power, but also that big difference between the normalized power and the average power also points to just like my variability index was very high, which was a result of me having to work harder on the climbs than, like for instance, like the top 4 finishers were probably having to work comparatively for their FTPs.
Okay.
So it was generally just, very, very punchy for me.
Yeah.
I mean, for anyone, obviously, but yeah.
How many feet?
So that's by the numbers, I guess, but maybe a couple of key points. For me,
what was
the
the
first? Go ahead.
What was the elevation?
Total elevation, which of course, in my experience, that can vary drastically from computer to computer.
Yeah.
Mine said 22,329 feet.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. So they're never so far off that you can't look at it and go, "Oh my goodness." So
yeah. When I saw that, I definitely was like, "Wait, how tall is Everest? Is that almost an Everest?"
So when I did the full pull, the 100, the 125, 26, whatever it was a few years ago, when I got to the end, my Garmin said it was 4,000 feet. I was like, liar. Like, liar. You were lying to me, Garmin. And then I did the correction and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's a little more like it. Some highlights for the day?
Yeah. So, the first, I would say like third, almost half of the ride was like super solid. Just looking at my power graph and just like, remembering how I was feeling, like super smooth sailing, just tough climbs, beautiful gravel, like nothing, but it all felt very manageable.
Okay.
The wheels were still on the bus and, was just having a blast. And, let's see, I would say first really memorable section was the second section of single track, which was around, let me switch to distance here. That would have been around mile 72. So the first section of single track, which was just before that, was like nothing. It was, very short, not technical at all, just like, very flowy. The second section of single track was very, very rocky, very technical, and but I had a blast. I mean, it was awesome, and it was kind of funny because like the people that were near me on the trail at that point were like not having it. So I was like, yay, I did something kind of.
Those 2.2s came in handy there in that little section, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Especially because like I don't really have mountain bike skills. So, if you have fat rubber, at least you can kind of fake it a little bit.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting. That was, a 4-mile section, I believe, and that took quite a bit of time. And then after that was the first section where we began sharing the course with one of the, hey, Jessica. That was one of the first sections where we were sharing the course with other people. So we were sharing the course with the 120s. And honestly, it was a little bit annoying.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because
absolutely.
The whole first part of the day, we just had the course to ourselves. And I think the reason it was annoying is because it wasn't one of their timed segments. So they were just kind of tootling around. And granted, most of them were going faster than me because they're still way stronger riders than I am. But there were a few descents where it was just I can't really let it out and go as fast as I would want to here because there's just a lot of people around and I don't really, I'm not a roadie. I'm a good descender, but I'm not a good descender when it involves trusting other people or anticipating what another rider is going to do. I hate that kind of stuff. Yep. That's why I do the kind of riding I do. Yep. But then shortly after that was what is it called? Winter camp, the first aid station, RB Winter, yeah. Yep. And that was the first really big moment. So I roll in, and the drop bags we were told would be at campsite number 1 where the sleepover was, and so I get there, and there's nobody there. Mm-mm. And there's a couple going for a walk, just some campers, and I say hey, have you seen some bike race people? And they're well, yeah, there's bike race people everywhere. And I'm yeah, no, none of those people, the people who work for the bike race. And they're oh yeah, no, they left. No. and this drop bag contained 2 liters, of my drink mix, which was going to last me the rest of the race. And I was oh. No. And I, started looking at the map and I was it's another 50 miles to the next gas station even. What am I going to do? And these people were so sweet that I will never forget it. They were the nicest people. They were here, we're making breakfast, take our turkey bacon. We're making some pancakes. So we're going to help you out.
Oh,
they were the best.
Awesome. That's awesome.
And, but I came to my senses and I was wait a second, maybe there's no way they just packed up and took my bag with them. No. Maybe they moved it over to the aid station, which was just a little bit further up the road. So I was okay, hold the pancakes. I'll be right back if it's not there. So I hop on the bike, roll up the hill, meet Joey, who I didn't know was Joey from, the Mid-Atlantic Gravel podcast. I'm a big fan of the show. Had I known, I would have asked for an autograph. But Joey totally helped me out. I was have you seen a drop bag? And he was yeah, right here. And it just solved all my problems. And
Joey solves all my problems too. So I get it. I get it. He's a problem solver.
Someone just gave me all those stuff and I just happened to have them. That was my cue that gave me all of them.
Definitely changed my day. I thought things were going to be very, very different at that point. But yeah, so put in the bladder, hydration pack, and went on my way. And from there, let's see.
About what mile are we at now?
RB Winter Aid was around mile 85.
Okay.
And so the next big section, I would say the next milestone would be, what's it called? The other campsite.
Pope Hattie?
Yeah, Pope Hattie. So Pope Hattie, I knew the approach was going to be a little bit of a mystery because the route goes through a gate where cars can't go. So when I pre-drove the course, I couldn't drive that section. And that section was really funny because basically the trail gets more and more and more primitive and less and less and less of a trail. And I think that there was some point where I was supposed to fork kind of this way and then it turned into a road again. I didn't see that. Because at a certain point I was just trail's gone. I'm just in the woods now. And I was like, whatever. This is cool. We're doing this now. So I was like, there's like a video clip of this on my Instagram. I'm just like taking my bike for a walk through the woods. And I've done stuff like that all the time. It's like, whatever. Yeah. Taking the bike for a walk. It's no big deal. But then I realized, like, wait a second. I think I'm like next to the track on the GPX. I'm not exactly on it. So then I was like, oh, there's a road over there. Okay. So that was fun. And then also, of course, the climb out of Popati is just, not just an incline, but just like, I mean, it's a 4x4 road. It's a Jeep road basically. And, at that point I knew going into it, like, I'm not riding that. There is no way I'm riding that. And, interestingly enough, I did drive that portion when I pre-drove the course coming from the other direction in my Mazda CX-5. But it was so funny because when I approached it in the car, it said warning unmaintained road, which I didn't really, it's like, yeah, they're all unmaintained roads. Okay, whatever. And then it said drivable hiking trail. And I was like, it doesn't look that bad. It doesn't say 4x4. It said 4-wheel drive recommended. And I was like, well, I have 4-wheel drive. Okay. So started driving down it and turned a corner, and it was just, like, oh, this is a Jeep road. But by that point, there's no room to do a K-turn. I mean, I'm on like the side of a cliff, and I couldn't back up either. So I just took like half an hour, like carefully, like off-roading my leased car, and just like, please don't destroy it. Like, I'm just the whole time just like going through my head, like, what happens? Like, what happens? Like, what happens if I like get stranded here? Like, what does that entail? Like, do they come helicopter out your car? Oh yeah.
So do you on these things? Do you carry any like beacon technology? Like an inReach?
Yeah, for sure. Well, so all of us had to have some kind of spot tracker, and but I personally I have a Garmin inReach Messenger, which is basically like it's a little bit smaller than a spot tracker, and I really like it because they have a great app where you can text through your phone. I used to have like the old school inReach that looks more like a sat phone, and those are just so horrible. If you've ever tried to send a text through one of those, it's like it doesn't even have a keyboard. It has just like you have to kind of like use arrow keys to pick each individual letter, and it takes forever. So like really you just wind up using the pre-configured text messages that say like, I'm not dead.
Yeah. I just went through that decision tree between the Messenger and the inReach, and I ended up with the inReach. I liked the fact that you could use it through the phone, but then also use it sort of independently. And I know the Messenger, you can do some of the same things. So the Messenger, the battery lasts a whole lot longer, though. The Messenger, the brick unit.
That's a very long time.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I was just curious about that.
Yeah, no, I generally always take one of those with me if I'm on a route where there's limited cell reception. You never know. I've definitely I've had misadventures on trails that are very tame. It's like it doesn't matter how tame the trail is. If you're stranded, you're stranded. And if you don't have cell reception and you need help, it's better to have that than to not have it. But yeah, so the climb out of Popati, absolutely brutal, but knew it was going to be brutal. So it was just like, all right, time to go for a hike. And after that, it was kind of smooth sailing, a few beautiful descents. Just off the mountain, and sun's starting to set around now, and I made my what should have been my final pit stop in what is this, Seagullville? There's a country store there, and it was supposed to be my water refill stop. However, and like I said, this is all meticulously planned. So this is like, I have known this is my last water stop. This is just a water stop for a very long time. I've studied this map and this plan 1,000 times. Now, did I get water? Or did I get distracted by the snack aisle for some reason?
Uh-oh.
It turns out it was option B. I don't know why. I was just like, wow, look at all these snacks. Meanwhile, like I have all of my calories and carbs on my back already. Like I'm good. I don't need snacks. I need water. But yeah, no, instead I got some Swedish fish and
Swedish fish get everybody at UnPAved.
Oh yeah.
yeah, and something else and walked out of there with no water. And it wasn't until I was like back out climbing up the next mountain, excuse me, mountain that I realized, oh no. And, looked at the map and there was one final gas station. And it was really frustrating also just because I picked that because it was very efficient. It was, that stop was at mile, let's see, just before mile 140. Yeah, just around mile 140. And, so it was like 80 miles to the end, and I can generally get about, maybe like 75 miles out of a 3-liter bladder. So I was planning on, and I knew I was probably going to run out towards the end, but it was the end, the final push. So I was like, okay, that's a good place to stop for my water. So I was very frustrated because I was like, damn, now I'm going to have to stop again. And that's always frustrating when you have a plan that you've put together, because now it's like, I don't know what this other option is like. I don't know where it is. I don't know how far. I don't know how much climbing it's going to add. So I look at the map. Also my light falls off the front at this point on a chunky descent. But it was just a bolt that came loose, and it's a dynamo light. So it was just like dangling from its wire. So I, stop, get at the zip ties. And, I should say like the toolkit that I carry, it's basically like a bike packing toolkit. So it has every fathomable thing to repair any fathomable thing that could break, tire boots, dental floss, needle to sew, through a sidewall gash, stuff like that. So zip tie the light back on, we're good to go. And then I see, okay, there's the last pit stop is, there's a gas station, and it looks like it's 2 miles off trail. So that's kind of annoying, but let's go for it. And it closes at 10 o'clock, and I don't know if we can get there, but let's try. Yeah. So I don't get there in time. The gas station is closed. Oh. I'm now 2 miles off trail. And when I went off trail, I immediately start flying downhill. And I'm like, oh, no.
Got to come back.
I've got to go back up this.
No.
So now when I'm at the bottom, I'm like, okay, I still don't have water. I've now added more climbing. This is great. So I look at the route and I'm like, you know what? I could, according to like, if this was a bikepacking race, I would absolutely double back exactly the way I came, because that's the rule. You have to re-enter the trail where you left it. Right. But they didn't say that was our rule. Our rule was that you can't cut the trail like as a shortcut. And so I looked at the map and I was like, okay, I could go this way, and I'm technically missing this little chunk, but I'm still doing more miles and more climbing. So I think it's okay. And Rich was like, yeah, that's fine. Not in the moment, afterwards. Yeah. I was like texting Rich at like 4 a.m. like, hey, Rich.
That's sensible, though. That's sensible. I like that.
Yeah, it just seemed like a really, really bad decision to go back exactly the direction I came. Yeah. It just would have added a lot more time. Although the climb out the way that I went was worse. Oh. But so I get to the top of that, and I was really excited when I got to the top, because I knew that the final, I knew it was kind of the final gauntlet of the route. It was another quote unquote drivable hiking trail. But
you still don't have water, right?
Oh yeah, still no water at this point. I've been out of water for almost 2 hours at this point. Oh. Yeah, which is not just a concern for me in the moment because I'm thirsty, but also, if you become dehydrated, it impacts your digestive system's ability to absorb nutrients. So you can enter this death spiral where you stop absorbing nutrients, and then if you go past a certain point, it's almost like going into the red in terms of like efforts, in the sense that once you've gone past a certain point, the water that you do drink, when you get the water, it just like sits in your gut, kind of like a rock, and then you're still not absorbing nutrients. So it can really induce a really bad bonk. So I was really worried that was going to happen. And, like my drink mix was highly, highly concentrated. So it's not like that was, this was like syrupy. So it's not like I was about to just be like,
start doing shots.
Chug. Yeah. For a point of reference, I was taking two small sips from the hydration pack for my nutrition every 20 minutes. Like that's how concentrated it was.
Oh, wow.
So that didn't help me at all. But so amazingly, I get back on course and I get to this drivable hiking trail, which I was really excited for because I didn't get to pre-drive it. So I was like, this is going to be interesting. And I heard a couple of people say that it was like kind of gnarly. So I was excited about it. And I'm listening to a podcast. You know, it's the middle of the night, obviously, all alone out there. And I get the shit scared out of me because there's a person suddenly. And it turns out it was Jessica Nankman, who, you know, I had been chasing her dot ever since she passed me all day. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Because I hadn't checked track leaders in like hours and hours and hours at this point. And so I assumed like she had finished hours ago. So I mean, that changed my entire outlook. I was like, oh my God, somebody else is still on the trail. And like, I had totally like Instagram stalked like all of the other people doing the race because I wanted to know like who these people were, which was, in hindsight, like I maybe wish I hadn't done that because I saw like, oh, everyone's like sponsored. These are like serious athletes. And like, I'm not, but that actually did help when I saw Jessica because I was like, well, I know Jessica's like a total fucking badass. So I'm sorry. Are we allowed to swear?
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine. No problem.
Okay, wonderful. But yeah, so I knew Jessica was a total badass. So seeing that she was still out there and also struggling, I was like, oh, cool. Okay. I feel a lot better now. And, yeah, so we chatted and, you know, she was also in a rough spot and she had been kind of like parked at that spot at the trailhead. She was trying to get in touch with her husband and she was like really thinking about scratching. And she was like, well, if you're still out here, let's do this. So like, let's push ahead. And it was awesome. It was like
nice.
total unexpected, like awesome serendipitous moment.
So she didn't say, oh, you were excited because you caught her. She wasn't sitting there saying, oh God, Cass caught me.
No. I mean, and she, because also she had started after me. So me catching her is relatively meaningless. This means like, okay, now she only has an hour lead on me, you know? And also she left me in the dust shortly after that. So, but not before. So we're riding and we hear a voice and we're like, what the hell? And I'm like, maybe, and we see some lights. And I'm like, maybe there's like campers out here. Like I don't know. We're like, yeah, it must be campers. And it turns out it's her husband. So Joel had been trying to find her. And excuse me. So we stop, we chat a little bit. And he gave me this fleece vest that he was wearing, which was so needed. I guess I left out the fact that it was absolutely freezing out there. The forecast was like, maybe it's going to get into the low 40s. It was definitely below freezing, you know, according to my computer. And I think like the mountain weather out there, it's like the forecast you can kind of take with a grain of salt because you get these like microclimates, you know, like I definitely saw like little tiny streams that were frozen even while I was out there. Yeah. So it was really, really cold. And all I had, I was wearing an Aero road suit and a rain shell. And that was it. And the fact that I was wearing an Aero suit was hilarious because I was wearing the rain shell, which was not Aero, almost all day. So it was a really silly choice of wardrobe. But so I was freezing at that point. And so Joel was so kind and gave me his vest, and that was incredible. Nice. And at first, Jessica was going to take it, and I was like, no, I couldn't possibly take it. And she was like, well, no, I actually have a space blanket on underneath this rain shell. I was like, okay, yeah, give you that vest. And the huge thing, though, was Joel was like, well, our van is just up the road, and we have water. Nice. And so that changed everything because, I mean, at this point, it's still another 40 miles to the end, you know, and I'm still out of water. So at a certain point, we're riding, and Hen Step, so this drivable hiking trail called Hen Step, was absolutely comically ridiculous. You know, just as technical as that other single track section that I talked about, you know, all baby heads and whatnot. But then there were these like weird, like cartoonish, like neon green pools. Like I wouldn't call these puddles. These were like the entire width of the trail, and some of them were like 15 feet long and like a foot to half a foot deep, and it must have been algae or something, because these were like neon green. It looked like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like slime.
You get superpowers after you go through them. That's the way that works.
I know. Or maybe we were just hallucinating at this point. Who knows?
That could be it too.
So at a certain point, I had to stop and have a snack, and had to stop because it was like technical, so I couldn't just like, pop something in my mouth. Jessica keeps on going, and by the time I get to their van, she's long gone, but she had left out this beautiful spread for me. She had left a note, it said "help yourself," and there was a gallon of water and a bunch of snacks, which I didn't really need, but I took them anyway because I was like, snacks. Who doesn't need snacks? As we've well established, I always am interested in snacks. So that also kind of marked the end of Hen Step, because Joel had basically parked at like kind of the trailhead and thought I was out of the woods there, but it turns out not. There were still a couple of like punchy little climbs at the very, very, very end there, right before you get to Camp K. And Camp K is basically the mark of like the real end of what I would consider like any of the tough riding. From there, it's like basically a false flat all the way back to town. Okay. And once I hit that false flat, I was so stoked because I just got into the aero bars, put on some music, and just went as fast as I could. And it was interesting because by the hours, this was the longest ride I had ever done. And it was the first time I had hallucinated I was like just starting to, and I'm glad it was just towards the very end, because I did not enjoy it. I did not like that feeling of like, there's faces in the woods and like skulls and like demons and stuff.
All of a sudden, the nighttime riding didn't hold as much appeal.
Yeah, it definitely turned into like, yep, not looking in the woods, not looking in the woods. Don't look in the woods. Look straight ahead. Do not look in the woods. Like, there's something there. Don't look at it. Right. But I knew it was actually the weirdest hallucination that happened. It wasn't like a visual hallucination, but so I have a little doggy, like 35-pound little mutt, and he has separation anxiety, so he has to come with me on all of my training rides. Oh my! And so anytime, if you ever do any riding on the Erie Canal, you've probably seen me out there towing my dog behind me, and it's actually a huge help when you're training, because it adds, it's like training weights, so I don't have to go as fast when I'm trying to like put out my watts. But I'm just so used to my dog being behind me that at one point when I got off to just like stretch my legs for a second, I looked behind my bike, like expecting my dog to be there, and he wasn't there, and I was like, that's funny. So I definitely. I kind of like don't want to know what like hour 30 of a ride would feel like for me. Would it look like? Yeah. And and it's also diminishing returns at a certain point. And I think this is like in the bikepacking community, this has been, I think, like a real topic of experimentation and discussion in terms of like, how hard do you go, and what are the diminishing returns, and is it better to sleep more and go faster? And I now, having experienced that, I think I'm definitely of the school of thought that like, yep, getting a solid 5 hours a night of sleep every night is probably a good idea.
We all saw what Lachlan Morton just did, when he did Divide. Yeah. And he's basically like sleep a lot. And he crushed it. So and Lael does the same thing. That's what she's figured out over the years works for her. And
it's interesting because each year people keep getting faster and faster. And when you look at what the three male leaders of the Tour Divide did this year, it's like, I don't know if I'm down for that. I don't know if I'm down for just like pushing for 3 days nonstop. Yeah. That's right. But, that's bikes. That's bike racing. Gets faster every year. It doesn't seem to slow down.
So now you get to the end. You've settled into that false flat. You're down in the arrows. You're hallucinating, having a good time. You get to the end. Now, do you do what everybody else does at UnPAved, and you start partying, or do you just fall over and go to sleep?
Yeah. I stopped at was it Rusty Rail?
Rusty Rail.
Yeah.
Rusty Rail.
Yeah, I stopped at Rusty Rail. Unfortunately, they weren't open. But no, the finish line for us was the Miller Center. So I keep on going, and so I get within sight of the Miller Center, and the whole time I was actually trying to catch Jessica again. I was like opening track leaders, and I was like, oh, I think she's right in front of me. I'm going to try and catch her. Even though, like I said, she started way after me, so it didn't mean anything. But so it's always fun to have like a little something to chase. It gives you a little extra motivation. Sure. But once the Miller Center was in sight, I saw somebody like with a flashlight, and I was like, oh my God, somebody's there. That's amazing. Nice. And so I come flying in, and like Joel and Jessica are there with their van. They're kind of like getting, all settled in. And my pals from the Rochester Gravel Collective had set their alarms. Shout out to Joanna and Jay. They had set their alarms, and they had come out to see me at the finish line at 4 a.m. in the morning. But it was hilarious because I was so out of it that I don't know who it was for like the first like minute. Like seriously. Well, because it's also the kind of thing where it's like you have your bike friends that you always see in kit, Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then when you see them in civvy clothes, you're like, who are you?
Who are you? What? You don't look the same.
Yeah, let alone when you've been riding your bike for 26 hours and it's 4 a.m. So skid across the finish line, celebrate with them. And they were like, there's a bag of goodies they left for you. There were like 3 beers and like 25 whoopie pies and like 2 scarves. I think they were just like, give them everything. And I was just on absolute cloud 9. I was so happy, so pumped. And, because I think it's like, I was listening to an interview with Rebecca Rush today, and it was actually really nice to hear that like she of all people kind of goes through a similar kind of like, self-negotiation when doing a big endurance push of just like, I really want to quit. I've told people I'm doing this thing. I'll feel stupid if I quit. And then, so there were definitely points like during the ride where I absolutely was like, I wasn't having a bad time, Well, I guess that's subjective, like it was a difficult time. It was a tough time. But I was still having fun. But there were definitely moments where I was like, man, this just might be too tough. Like, should I just keep doing this? I know I'm dead last, but like, I don't know, a bunch of people have scratched, so it's like I beat those people, I guess. Yeah. So like I think the elation when I passed through the finish line was like mostly about like, wow, this was way, way harder than I possibly fathomed it would be. But I finished, and it's actually a time that I'm. Thank you. But it's hilarious though, because for the Big Lick, there was an application process. And you had to submit like a CV of your results and stuff. I was like, here's the time I scratched the AZT in 2017. I had like no other results to show really. But I was like, well, I did have my FKT of the gap in the CNO, so I linked to like that, and I was like, I do big miles, but like I really wanted to get in, so I talked a big game in my application. I was like, I'm not coming just to finish, I'm coming to win. So yeah, not so much. But yeah, it was just everything that I love about this kind of riding, about this kind of, long distance endurance riding, everything that I love about this kind of riding. Yeah. This ride was the epitome of 100%.
Nice.
And it was really interesting to see, I think that a lot of the people that scratched, fell on the other side of the fence. And I heard this from the organizers that it was pretty polarizing. Either people loved it or they hated it.
Okay.
And, yeah, I loved it. It was just a little bit of everything, all the kinds of riding you could possibly imagine. You're always either overbiked or underbiked, and plenty of surprises to be had. And I really, really hope that they do it again next year.
Okay, that was my next question.
Challenging.
It was my next question.
Oh, I'm absolutely doing it again. Absolutely, no question.
Nice.
And I think Rich was, and I hope I'm not like spoiling anything, but I think they're generally thinking about maybe like dialing back the intensity a little bit, but making it longer.
Yeah.
Which I love the sound of, because that favors me a little bit more. You know,
I kind of got that impression.
I can ride
from
forever,
Dave.
but
I kind of got that impression from Dave when he was here last week or a few weeks ago, talking about the fact that it might actually, as you described, be a little bit longer. We didn't really get the dialed back part of it, but I felt like there was a move for something a little longer.
Yeah, not dialed back overall, because it would be like less climbing but longer. So I guess that would be easier for me personally. But overall probably evens out. And I think the other thing that, and you know, this whole thing was very much an experiment for everyone since they had never done it before. And the thing that I think a lot of us were really hoping for, and they're going to try and figure out a way to do, hopefully, is a way that the people doing this ride can participate in the social events.
Yeah.
Because like between the fact that I had a 2 a.m. start time and that it took me so long, I was just like, well,
I
guess I'm not partying. I mean, I could have, you know, but like I try and be responsible, and I'm like, I probably shouldn't, go, sprint and compete in the SRAM thing, or like, go out drinking the night before, Did I get a lot of sleep? No, of course not. But
how long does it take you to recover from an effort like that?
Yeah, that's the thing that's evolving for me, for sure.
Okay.
Like when I did my simulation ride for my first FKT this season, simulation meaning, it was like my one like big long ride, and I did it at race pace. That took me a long time to recover from. Like I didn't feel really back to 100% for like 2 weeks, I would say. And after my FKT, I was wrecked.
Yeah.
Like it was not great. And it was actually a huge lesson learned, because the Airbnb I had booked to stay in after that event in DC at the end of the CNO, it was the 3rd story walk up.
We're laughing with you.
Yeah. Oh, so am I. Yeah, so lesson learned, hotels are cool. They have elevators. And but so when I did a simulation for my upcoming FKT attempt of the Erie Canal a few weeks ago, and I already noticed with that. So I should also say I did a bike fit like a month ago with Redbeard Bikes in Brooklyn, and I drove all the way back down to New York City just because. Like I lived there for 11 years, and Ilya, who runs Redbeard, is just the best bike fitter I know, and I would trust him with anything. So I was like, I was basically having some issues with my back and my shoulders, and I just wasn't able to spend time in the aero bars because I was comfortable in the aero bars, but when I came out of it, my whole back would seize up. So anyway, after I did that bike fitting and I did my simulation for my upcoming FKT, I was shocked because had a little bit of tenderness and a little bit of fatigue in I would say like my tendons for my left hamstring, but that was gone in 2 days, and otherwise my body was like just fine, just like totally normal. And I was like, that's wild. Like if this is like becoming my new normal, like that's kind of rad. And so after UnPAved, body wise, I was like fine. It was totally bananas. It was the first big long dumb ride like that I've ever done where like there were no overuse injuries, there was no pain. Nice. Body wise, I was totally fine. Now, fatigue, mentally, I slept for 4 hours in my car after the race and just like woke up and I was like, where am I? How do I get home from here? And like, and the one thing, and we talked about this off mic before we started recording, and my voice is a little bit hoarse right now, and the reason is I've kind of like, as I've been increasing the duration of my ultra events, I've been having breathing issues, just because I want to be cool like Lael, no, just kidding. But no, I get exercise induced asthma, and it took me a long time to really accept that's what that was, and to be like, I should probably talk to my doctor about this, because like I don't know. There's just that stigma about like with pros who like quote unquote have asthma, you know, so that they can have like inhalers that give them, you know, a legal advantage or something like that. But then I had asthma when I was a kid, and I was like, yeah, no, this is the same thing. This is totally asthma. So I talked to my doctor, and she was like, yeah, you should have albuterol. So that usually helps me if I take like 2 puffs before a ride. And if it's an event, like as long as UnPAved, if I take like 2 puffs in the middle of the event, usually I'm symptom free. But for some reason on this event, that's not the case. And like basically towards the end of the event, it was pretty bad. You know, like I didn't have full lung capacity. And if I breathed too deeply, I would just start coughing uncontrollably. I was like coughing stuff up for sure. And that's kind of been still working its way out. You know, obviously I've been testing for COVID, and it's not that I'm not sick. It's just, it's always been this way ever since I was a kid. Whenever I get a bad bout of asthma, it just like moves down into my lungs, and then it takes like a couple of weeks to go away. Hopefully it's gone before my erie canal FKT attempt.
Joey, you have to carry your little puffer, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic effort.
That was great.
Fantastic recap.
Everything.
Congratulations on finishing that beast.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me. This is super exciting. This is the first time I've ever done a podcast about bike stuff. You know, it's super fun.
It was great.
There's something romantical about like ultra endurance for me.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, it's because I have this drive where I want to do it, but I haven't touched it yet.
Yeah.
I don't know. I love it.
Do it. One of us.
Be one of us. Be one of us. One of us. So this has quickly become like one of our longest podcast episodes, and it's fitting. Yes, it's fitting because it's the longest ride I think we may have ever talked about. So we are not going to cut anything short. We are going to dive right into this or that. And as a regular listener, Cass, I know that you're going to want to participate in these, correct?
I don't know if I remember what this or that is. I'm sorry. I promise I'm a big listener. I literally like when I pre-drove the entire 200 miles, I was listening to the 3 like /4 UnPAved episodes of like the last 2 years. So I promise I've listened, but I don't remember what this or that.
I wanted to release the 21 post episode where we all rode long.
I actually downloaded it and I just never went back and was able to.
You're a little busy. It's all right.
A little busy. I'll give you a couple of things. You make a choice. Defend your answer or not. It's up to you. First item, an art museum or a history museum?
Oh, art museum, no question.
Joey?
That's tough. As I've gotten older, I've appreciated art a lot more.
Yeah.
I also love history too. Like, art history.
Go, cheater.
I don't know. I've appreciated the art a lot more.
Yeah.
But I do love a lot of history. That's tough. So I go art history.
Yeah, well, that's a valid choice. I also am going to agree with you in that, but I think I would go to a history museum only because I think there's so much that as I've gotten older, you know, that's where you learn. And if you ever stop learning, then you need to go somewhere else. So I think a history museum for me at this point in my life would be something that I would dive into. Second item. Be a passenger or be a driver?
Depends on who the driver is.
Anyone from New Jersey.
Joey?
Oh, I don't know if Cass finished.
I think they punted.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a driver.
Okay. Joey?
Oh, I'm a driver.
Yeah, I think I'm a driver as well. Yeah.
Being a passenger.
Yeah.
I also just doesn't drive most places. I'm also a really bad backseat passenger with Jess. I said Jersey drivers.
Mm-hmm.
Scares the crap out of me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Time goes by a lot quicker. I commuted 100 miles every day for 5 years.
When you're driving.
100+ miles. So
yeah.
I've gotten accustomed to
being the driver. I think driving. You can control. I like that. Would you rather text?
Half the time my car drives for me. I turn on the eyesight stuff, whatever Subaru has, and just let go.
Go to sleep, take a nap?
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Would you rather text or call?
Oh, text. I'm a millennial. Don't call me. If you're gonna call me, you gotta give me a heads up. Like, let me know in advance.
I've gone back and forth as a millennial. I don't. It's weird when my phone rings.
Mm-hmm.
The same time, if I either need or want to get the word across, I don't know. Like sometimes a word it comes off differently as a text over a phone. So I will call people. Like last person was probably Matt Hawkins. I called him. I was like, "Well, this is too awkward to text, so I am going to call." Like, well, I'm calling you. I don't want it to come across weird, but no, just text me. Like it just.
So, as the elder in the room, as Gen X, I will text when there's no immediacy required. But if it's an important thing that I need an answer to, that's when I call you. Is when there's something that,
It's usually like my
something
parents
on the
are
line.
like that. My mom knows it.
Yeah.
Or my dad knows it. It'll take like 4 days to reply back to a text maybe, but I will.
I have friends like that don't text me back for days, and that's perfectly fine because there's no immediacy. If I've sent you a meme or something stupid, there's absolutely no imperative, no pressing need for you to respond or text back.
I think no, it is created a sense of urgency where people want that instant text back, and I think that's what texting has done to.
I see that.
Maybe us millennials. I don't know.
If somebody calls me without warning and they're not a boomer, I assume somebody's dead or there's an emergency.
Oh, that's 100%. Like Jess will call me at like 12. I'm like, and after I've gotten multiple accidents. Yeah, she's like been in 2 accidents this year. I freak out when she calls me when it's not normal. I'm like, what is wrong?
Yep, that's
like
all.
She's had some weird issues at school with. I won't get into it, but I'm like, what? Like, I instantly pick up because I'm terrified.
Yeah.
Like, I hate in the morning she'll call me on the way home from yoga or CrossFit because the one time she did, she was in a horrible accident.
Yeah.
It's like a little traumatizing on my end.
There needs to be an intermediary or some sort of intermediate thing to the text.
I need like a different ringtone. Like, is it an emergency or Star Wars or whatever I have?
Okay. Last one. Harry Potter or Star Wars?
Oh, no contest. Star Wars.
Joey?
I only put that because while I had the Pennsylvania plague, I just cleared all of Harry Potter again.
Did you?
I love Star Wars, but there is something about Harry Potter. Like, I'm definitely Star Wars over Harry Potter, but...
Well, you've heard they're basically the same story.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've heard the comedian talk about that, but...
And it's true, though. It's
Are they?
Kinda.
You're a wizard, Luke.
And everything is very similar when you start to think
You
about
got
it.
an orphan raised by the aunt and uncle, and you've got the...
Okay.
Yeah, you got the evil nemesis.
The family is tied back to the dark side or the Death Eater, whatever you want to call it, but it's very similar. I love Star Wars.
Yeah.
But rewatching Harry Potter as a 33-year-old and not like however old I was when it came out was kind of cool. I enjoyed it.
Okay.
And it was also easy to spend 15, it was way more than 15 hours.
Yeah.
Like 3 straight days of being sick.
I'll easily, this is a hands down no. I love Harry Potter. My kids, I'm Gen X. My kids, Harry Potter, we ate that up. But man, I'm Star Wars. I mean,
I think we can all agree that lightsabers are objectively cooler than magic wands.
Yeah, there we go. There, that's actually putting it all in a nutshell right there. I like it. I like it. All right, everybody, it's about time for we shut this thing down for the week. Cass, one more time, thank you, and congratulations on that finish. And we'll get
congratulations on the finish.
Yeah, we'll get to meet.
Thank you so much for having me.
I have no more kids to get married, so I'll be at UnPAved next year. That's the way it works.
Yeah.
That's the way it works.
Sweet.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to this episode of Mid-Atlantic Gravel, Travel, and Dirt. If you've enjoyed the podcast, maybe consider joining our Patreon family. We really do appreciate all the support, and your monthly donation of just a couple of bucks help us keep this podcast going. Joey, how can folks get in touch with us?
GravelTravelDirt.com, and our Instagram is at MidAtlanticGTD.
We are being recorded this week from Rochester, New York, all the way down. Huh?
Nope.
What?
Aspen, Colorado at the moment.
Oh, Aspen, Colorado. That's right. Oh, I thought I had it. I thought I had it right. Aspen, Colorado. Well, let's say Rochester, New York via Aspen, Colorado, and also right here in Blake's Kitchen. Thanks for riding along. Until next time, do good, be nice, go slow, respect others.
Bye.
Love you, bye.
Peace.